Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Sports Mo's Football Shorts. I'm Barney Corkhill. I'm here with our football editor Matt Law, and we're here to discuss game week 4 predictions for the Premier League season. We're still all square, incredibly, after 3 game weeks, Matt. We didn't do too well last week, but some of the scores that are coming up are absolutely bonkers, aren't they? So, in our defence, it's pretty hard to predict them this season so far. Yeah, go on.
No, I was just going to say, obviously I've got the Liverpool one, but like you say, my score predictions this week probably reflect that a little bit because I've done a few probably that I wouldn't have done because the goals are flying in, aren't they? So
they are flying in, and long may it continue. To be fair, this game week starts with a London derby between Chelsea and Crystal Palace. How do you see that one going?
Yeah, it's a good one, isn't it? To be fair, I mean, it's on paper you'd probably expect Chelsea to be the heavy favourites for it, and I do expect them to win, but. Obviously, last time out against West Brom in the Premier League, crazy game, wasn't it? 3-0 down, almost in the blink of an eye. Obviously came back to draw. And you always felt that when they went 3-1, 3-2, there was always going to be a late goal coming because West Brom were just so deep, weren't they? Palace, on the other hand, obviously excellent performance at Manchester United and won that. But then, lost at home to Everton, which is disappointing. There was obviously a very, very. We'll say that a lot about. Say this about a lot of games that there's a dodgy call, a handball call in there. That Joel Ward one, wasn't it? Was unbelievable, but that is what it is, unfortunately, right now. But Palace, like going forward, Zaha seems to have a different sort of role going forward, and if they can really unleash him, because he was disappointing last season, wasn't he? But if they can really find a way to really get him in the game, because sometimes he's too wide and he can't really get in it. But, Chelsea, on the other hand, Timo Werner obviously will be keen to get off the mark, find the back of the net in the Premier League. So it's going to be an interesting game. And this is what I'm talking about the score predictions. I've actually gone 3-2 Chelsea here. I mean, I do quite like Palace going forward. They played excellent. United scored 3 times. Obviously, beat Southampton as well, didn't they, on their first game of the season? So 2 wins so far. I do fancy Chelsea, but close 3-2.
Yeah, I think Palace certainly carry more of a threat going forward this season than they did last. That was the big problem last season. And as you say, Zaha seems to be somewhere back towards his best. I think last week against Everton, they'll take heart from that performance. They were only, robbed of a result against the really informed Everton side by that terrible decision, that handball decision. Chelsea will be demanding a response, obviously, to that West Brom one. They got one in the second half of that, but then knocked out of the EFL Cup in midweek by Tottenham as well. So big game for Frank Lampard, big game for Chelsea, still looking for their first home win of the season. I can see them picking up. I've also gone for, we're not as high scoring for you as you. I've gone for 2-1 to Chelsea in that one. I mentioned Everton there, in great form at the moment. 3 wins from 3, one of only 3 teams to have that at this stage of the season. They take on a Brighton side who have also impressed despite only picking up 3 points. Desperately unfortunate to lose against Manchester United last weekend, but then were much more clearly beaten by them in the EFL Cup. How do you see that one going, Matt?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, Brighton against United, in the Premier League was a ridiculous game, wasn't it? Hitting woodworks, good saves from De Gea. I remember the one, made from close range. We made a smart save. And I think the fact is it was a penalty. In the end of the day, you can't put your hands up there. I don't think it's that debatable, to be honest, that it was a penalty. But it was so unfortunate. They played ever so well, Brighton. And like you say, in the Cup during the week, obviously both teams made loads and loads of changes and it was more comfortable. But Everton, on the other hand, just absolutely flying, aren't they? Obviously, Calvert-Lewin in the England squad now and certainly well-deserved. He's full of goals. But it's not even just him. Obviously, Richarlison is another one that I've said for quite a while now. I do really like him. I think he's a really good player. Obviously, James Rodriguez and Decore and Allen in midfield, all really good signings. And it just seems to be, they seem to be getting another centre-half in as well. And if they can do that and boost the area, they've got an excellent squad. And, could Everton make the top six maybe this season? I mean, you say that, it's such a strange season. They could be looking for top 4, but obviously flying, full of wins and full of goals at the moment. I expect them to win this game. I do think Brighton will be okay this season, but I think they'll lose here. I've gone 3-1 Everton.
Yeah, I've actually gone exactly the same as that 3-1. I think I agree with you in terms of Brighton. I think they've shown enough signs, even in defeat to United and Chelsea, that they'll be pretty confident of avoiding relegation this season. But it's these sorts of games where they are underdogs, where they maybe need to start turning those good performances into points. Obviously, putting away those chances against United last weekend would have certainly helped with that. Everton, they're gunning for their best start to a season since 1894. So their record at the moment is incredible, winning 6 from 6 across all competitions and scoring for fun, as you say. Calvert-Lewin leading the charge with that. So they're absolutely flying at the moment. I think Allen got injured in midweek, which Alisson's a doubter after picking up an injury in midweek as well. So that will affect them. I think Allen's proven to be really important for them so far. But at home to Brighton, they'll fancy the chances. So I agree with you there, 3-1. 5:30 kickoff is arguably the most mouth-watering of the games. Leeds versus Manchester United is Bielsa versus Pep Guardiola. And we mentioned how bonkers this season has been with goals so far. This one just seems to promise goals, doesn't it? Leeds already been involved in 2 4-3s this season, including against Liverpool on the opening day. And you'd probably expect this to be quite a similar game to that one. Manchester City, obviously 5-2 loss at home to Leicester last weekend, bounced back in midweek in the EFL Cup, but they'll be desperate to bounce back and return to winning ways in the Premier League, because if they lose this one, they could suddenly find themselves 9 points behind Liverpool already. And when you consider Liverpool, I think it was 15 points they dropped the entirety of last season. So 9 points, even at this early stage, is a huge mountain to climb for Man City. They need to win. This game, to be honest, I was so close to going something ridiculous and something like 5-3 Man City, because I can just see goals galore. But then, knowing my luck, it'll probably be a 0-0 after that. But I have gone for goals. I've reined myself in a bit and gone for 3-2 to Man City in this one.
Yeah, I've actually gone 3-1 City here. Yeah, it's just one of those games, like you say, you think there's going to be goals, but it could easily pull out, a 1-0 or something. But now City obviously getting back to winning ways in the cup against Burnley was hugely important. The Leicester game they just got really done, didn't they, on the counter attack, and so open, trying to push up, and obviously they played quite well for long stages of that game. But Leicester were just so incredibly clinical. And Leeds last time out, obviously beating Sheffield United. I think we've both said this season we fear a little bit for Sheffield United after last season. Patrick Bamford again, a player that I mentioned, coming up with a really big goal, and there's a lot of pressure on him. Probably not so much at this time Rodrigo. There's a little bit more sort of less pressure on him, but it's still question marks. He's a talk of the Leeds fans. Is he quite good enough? What they were saying, is he quite good enough for the Championship last season? Obviously played well, but obviously started this season really well. And no Jack Harrison for Leeds. Obviously he can't play against City, so it looks like Alioski will come into that team. I think Bielsa hinted pretty much that would be the case, that he would come in. So it's obviously a big game for him. And yeah, two managers obviously that to put them up against each other is going to be very, very interesting to see. But yeah, not exactly the same as you. I've gone City though, 3-1.
City 3-1. Okay, the final game on Saturday at 8 p.m. is Newcastle versus Burnley. Newcastle somehow got away with a point from Tottenham Hotspur last time out, which will go down as a good result, but not a good performance. Their first shot on target was that penalty, which I think was universally being decried as just never, ever a penalty, that handball against Eric Dyer, and should lead to a change in the laws. I think that's forthcoming, maybe even this weekend. Yeah, so they got a point from that to make it 4 points from opening 3 games, which is a decent start to them. But there are still concerns over their attacking threat after they didn't really lay a glove on Tottenham until that late penalty. Burnley also seem to be in a little bit of trouble. They're still looking for their first point of the season. It's not set up to be a thriller. We've just gone from Leeds Man City, which I said promised goals, to this one, which I don't think really does. If Newcastle play like they did against Tottenham and Burnley players they have done, certainly in the last game against Southampton when they lost 1-0, and in midweek against Man City, albeit with a lot of changes, I can see this one being 0-0. I've gone goalless in this one.
Goalless. Now, it's a big shout, isn't it, at the moment, to pick out a goalless game. I suppose if there's going to be one, it's going to be this. But I've gone 3 goals here. I've gone 2-1 Newcastle. Burnley, I suppose, similar boat to Sheffield United, in my opinion. They're one of those teams that could easily struggle, couldn't they, this season? Obviously, they've lost a few. And look at the games coming up. I mean, before the end of October, they played Tottenham and Chelsea. And obviously, they play West Brom away after this one, after the international break. And that already looks like a massive, massive game. Obviously, Danny Ings came back to haunt them, didn't he, last weekend when they played Southampton. But yeah, Newcastle, I think, obviously got a few injuries at the moment. Matt Ritchie will obviously come out of the team. He's got a shoulder injury. Looks like Joe Lewis will go back in there. And obviously they're waiting on St Maximum and players like that. They then get him back in the team. That would be extremely important. Obviously, Burnley getting Tarkowski back against City in the Cup is obviously big for them. And Ashley Barnes is back as well now. I don't know if he'll quite start this game. Might not be fit enough. But obviously, he looks like it might be Vidra and Wood, or obviously McNeil maybe a little bit further forward. But yeah, interesting sort of team selection. But yeah, I've actually got a few goals here. Maybe a little bit, optimistic, but 2-1 Newcastle.
2-1 Newcastle from that. Okay, Sunday. There's 6 games on Sunday because of the international break means there can't be any on Monday. First up is Leicester versus West Ham. We mentioned earlier Leicester's 5-2 win over Manchester City. Incredible performance and result. I think the criticism of them from Man City's duo Pep Guardiola and Rodri after the game was very harsh. They're saying they put 11 players behind the ball. I think they actually played quite well and with a lot of bravery against Man City. They're top of the table after 3 game weeks, which will obviously evoke memories of their title-winning season. They're the top scorers with 12 goals. First time in a long time a team has scored that many goals in the first 3 games of the season. So they're absolutely flying at the moment. We questioned whether they'd be able to repeat the first half of last season, but all signs so far look like they might do. West Ham, on the other hand, great win against Wolverhampton Wanderers last weekend, wasn't it? 4-0. No one really saw that coming, but then beaten by Everton 4-1 in the EFL Cup. David Moyes should be back on the touchline, I think, for this one after his coronavirus positive test. So he'll be back on the touchline. It's an interesting game for this one. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I think the thing with West Ham is, obviously they were poor against Newcastle, weren't they? But at Arsenal, they only just lost, didn't they? 2-1. There was a handball in there for me. Gabriel obviously conceded late on to lose 2-1 against Arsenal. I think there were signs there that, I think we mentioned it as well, it was very important for West Ham to pick up a big result in this run. I mean, you look at their fixtures coming up, Tottenham, City, Liverpool in 3 of their next 4, after which, and Leicester as well, obviously, in this game, which is, a rotten run of form. And if they'd have lost against Wolves as well, you just felt, if they lose again here, they've got 2 really awful games coming up after the international break. So, Leicester, on the other hand, obviously full of goals last time out. Vardy, I mean, there's always question marks, isn't there, over Vardy? People say this season, is this going to be the season where he struggles? Because he's obviously not getting any younger, but, excellent last time out and a lot of standout performances from Leicester. And yeah, it'll be very, very interesting for me to see what they do this season. Like you say, they were so good the first half of last season, then missed out on the top 4. So it's going to be extremely interesting to see. I've got a few goals here as well. I fancy Leicester. It's probably a little bit harsh on West Ham because I do think they've got a lot going for them at the moment. Obviously, they've got a lot of players. Finally, they're playing other teams in the Cup. Obviously, lost to Everton, didn't they, out of the EFL Cup now. But Leicester here 3-1.
Yeah, I've gone exactly the same, 3-1. West Ham do seem to be faring a bit better against the bigger teams after that disappointing defeat to Newcastle. But yeah, Leicester just flying at the moment, top of the table. So I've gone 3-1 for that one. Also at 12 p.m. on Sunday is Southampton versus West Brom. West Brom, they'll be kicking themselves for throwing that 3-goal lead away against Chelsea last time out. Southampton beat Burnley last time out for their first points of the season. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I think the West Brom game, obviously, there was a lot of positives, but again, a lot of negatives. At the end, it's obviously Chelsea are always going to, the quality that Chelsea possess, they're going to cause a lot of problems. But West Brom defending, some of it was really, it was just, they were desperately trying. I think desperate's the right word to use. You always felt they were going to concede, and I still do fear for them this season because they went into the 3-0 lead. Obviously, some mistakes from Chelsea. Obviously, the Thiago one, the Alonso header straight back into the middle, and obviously the corner is a mistake as well. Obviously, as Lampard pointed out after the match, so it wasn't particularly. Don't get me wrong, they were good finishes, but not moments or passages of play of brilliance. And Southampton, on the other hand, obviously beating Burnley last time out, and Danny Ings. It looks like they're going to keep hold of Danny Ings. At one point, it was a little bit of talk around him, and that would have been, awful for them to lose a player of that ability. We spoke about it quite a lot. Obviously, I know you're a big fan as well, and I am. I think he's an outstanding forward at this level and could play for any of the top clubs, as a squad player or a starter as well. So, I fancy Southampton here. Obviously, they are better away from home than at home. Southampton lost against Tottenham, didn't they? 5-2 last game at St Mary's. But, Southampton here 2-0.
Yeah, again, I've gone exactly the same. I do think West Brom have got good stuff in their team going forward, but as you mentioned, those Chelsea goals were pretty much gifted to them. So I can see Southampton keeping a clean sheet and Danny Ings helping himself maybe to both goals. I've gone for 2-0 in this one. Arsenal Sheffield United is at 2 p.m. on Sunday. Arsenal beat Liverpool at Anfield in the EFL Cup in midweek, but obviously were well beaten by them in the Premier League the previous week to end their perfect start to the season. Sheffield United, you mentioned them earlier, we might be a bit worried about them this season, still looking for their first point and their first goal of the season, the only team not to score this season. So they need a goal and they need a point on the board ASAP. The last 2 defeats particularly, against Aston Villa and Leeds United, would be disappointing ones because they would have been earmarked as games that they can get something out of. Maybe at home to Wolves, they might have been less optimistic, but even at home, they'll fancy the chance of getting stuff from those games. And when you consider they've got Arsenal in this one, then Liverpool, Manchester City and Chelsea coming up soon after this. There is a home game at Fulham in that, which already looks pretty important for them to get points from, but it's very important for them to get off the mark. I don't see it happening in this game. Arsenal have been in good form. It's only Liverpool that's beaten them so far, and Liverpool, look like a very, very strong team, and they're going to be tough to beat, and they're going to beat most teams in the Premier League this season. So there's no shame in losing at Anfield for Arsenal in the Premier League. In this game, I'd expect them to return to winning ways. I've gone for 2-0 again here to Arsenal.
2-0, yeah, I've actually gone 2-1 back Sheffield United to get off the mark. Obviously, it's one of those games, wasn't it? If Sheffield United were to pick up a good result here, it would leave them in good confidence ahead of the Fulham game. But if they were to pick up a poor result, it puts unbelievable pressure on that Fulham game, doesn't it? Like you mentioned, the games coming up, Liverpool, City, Tottenham is awful. Yeah, Arsenal, I think they've improved a lot, haven't they, under Arteta? So they've been an easy team to criticise, I think, over the last few years. They are not been particularly fantastic. Obviously, poor last season in the Premier League. Obviously, won the FA Cup, but Premier League form was very disappointing. But yeah, I think they've improved a lot. Obviously, trying to still get some deals done late in the window, which I still think they need. They're short in midfield. For me, maybe one or two in there. Obviously, Elneny and Xhaka play at the moment. So Boyos is in there as well. But the cup game, obviously, they needed Leno to come up with some really good saves to obviously beat Liverpool in the cup. But they were still really short with Liverpool, weren't they? In terms of, so that shows where they are. I mean, I still think they're top four challenges this season. Depends on whether they get another player or two in. But I'm expecting to be a little bit tight actually. Sheffield United. Chris Wilder will have them fired up. They really need a performance, but I don't think that's going to translate into any points. I've gone 2-1 Arsenal.
2-1 Arsenal for Matt. Okay, we mentioned briefly Fulham there. They look in a bit of trouble, don't they? They've 3-0 defeat at home to Aston Villa last time out, when they made Aston Villa look like one of the best passing teams in the world at times. They're defending in that. I can't remember the last time I saw such poor defending at Premier League level. So they look in trouble. Wolves fared even worse last time out, 4-0 defeat against West Ham. So they need something quickly. They've got 3 points on the board so far. Fulham bottom of the table with 0 points, 3 defeats from 3, 10 goals conceded already for them, bottom of the table. It's looking bleak for Fulham, isn't it? They've already been condemned to relegation by most pundits. I think Paddy Power have already paid out on them to be relegated, so it's really looking bleak for them. Wolverhampton Wanderers, they need to get points on the board in this game. This is a pretty much, it looks like it's still early in the season, of course, but it looks like this is as big a banker as you'll get in this Premier League season. So I can see Wolves picking up a victory and by some margin. If Fulham defend anywhere near as badly as they did against Aston Villa, then Wolves should be able to help themselves to even more goals than Villa did. So I've gone for 4-0 to Wolves here.
4-0, cool. Yeah, that's a big one to pull out, isn't it? If you get that one, then that's fair enough. I've gone a little bit closer. I've gone 2-0. I think, Wolves, dating back to last season, they've actually lost 5 of their last 7 games, which is a little bit surprising. You think how good they are. Obviously, they lost in the Europa League to Sevilla and Chelsea, didn't they? Obviously, end of last season, final day of the Premier League. And this season, in all competitions, obviously lost to Stoke as well in the Cup and City. And I do think they were quite good at City in the second half, weren't they? Their first game of the season, they were a little bit disappointing. Obviously, 3-1 sounds a lot better than 2-1. Obviously, City scored late on, didn't they? But for long spells, Wolves looked like they could nick a point. Obviously, very poor at West Ham last time out. West Ham were really good, to be fair, but Wolves let them play, let them find space. And yeah, Fulham were just desperate, weren't they? Some of that defending, and they don't really look like they've particularly addressed the problems of when they last came up in the Premier League. You think about Fulham, back in the days, Roy Hodgson, when they were pushing up the league and, they were playing European football and just playing so well. But now it just looked like they're going to go straight back down. But obviously it's a long season and things can change. And it's just the defending for me. It looks like they need, 2-3 more defenders. And they've obviously done a bit of business this summer anyway. But don't expect them to pick up anything here. I've gone Wolves 2-0.
I think Fulham are in the market for new defenders and they desperately need them, don't they? But they won't come in time for this match. So, both going for Wolves to win and a clean sheet in that game. The headline fixture of the game week is Manchester United versus Tottenham. Jose Mourinho returning to Old Trafford, of course. United, as we said earlier, scraped that win against Brighton after the final whistle had gone with a 100th minute penalty. But we were beaten by Crystal Palace in their first home game of the season. Tottenham, they've just had this brutal and unforgiving fixture schedule, haven't they? This will be their 4th game in the space of a week, but they've dealt with that so well so far. I think Mourinho pretty much gave up on the EFL Cup, but they still managed to beat Chelsea on penalties. They hit Maccabi Haifa for 7 in the Europa League on Thursday night, and it was only that ridiculous penalty call against Newcastle which denied them a victory there. So they've coped really well with this schedule, the like of which I can't remember seeing playing every 2 days. Tottenham have been in over the last week or so. So big props to them for that. They've done really well. How do you see this one going? Because I've gone back and forth on it.
I did the same, to be fair. I was thinking, obviously we had Luke Chadwick, didn't we, on yesterday, and he backed a draw in that game, and I was thinking, I was leaning towards a draw, but I've just got a feeling for United here. I just think Tottenham, if Tottenham can get Son back, obviously there's a little bit of doubt, isn't there, at the moment? It doesn't particularly look like he's going to play. He still might play, obviously he's not massively ruled out, and if he doesn't play, I think that's huge for United because he's such a fantastic player. And the fact that Tottenham played Thursday, I know obviously they're getting games in their legs at this stage, but it's still another game. And United have still had a little bit longer, obviously only a day. They played in the Cup, didn't they? Obviously a lot of United players didn't play in that game that will play here. And I just think at home, Fernandes coming in, there'll be obviously changes. I just think United are due a performance because they were poor against Palace and poor against Brighton as well, to be fair, in the Premier League last time out. Really poor. Should have lost that game. And I do think they're just going to, obviously Rashford getting an excellent goal was a lot better. I think there's a lot of positives to take from that. And I just feel like there is a good performance coming from United. And I think they could sneak a game. Obviously, they played well against Tottenham back in the last season. Obviously, their first game after lockdown, and should have won that game, to be honest. They had a lot of the ball and really, really played well. And I'm still not massively convinced by Tottenham this season. I mean, I think they'll be pushing high up the table, in and around the top four. But yeah, it's a tough one. I can understand if you go Tottenham or if you go a draw here, but I have just gone United 2-1.
Yeah, I've gone 2-1 in the other direction. I was very close to copying Luke Chadwick and going for a 1-1 draw because I think Tottenham's schedule, it has just been so harsh. They're bound to feel some effects of that this weekend. But they've also managed to rotate their really key players. The likes of Kane hasn't played too much over that week. Certainly in the last 2 days, he's been spared as much as he can be. And obviously he hit a hat-trick on Thursday as well, I think. So he's in banging goal-scoring form. So I can see him getting on the score sheet. It is, as you mentioned, it's one of those I wouldn't be surprised whichever way it goes. But I think if Man United defend like they did against Brighton and against Crystal Palace, there's just such huge question marks over the defending for me at the moment. So, yeah, I've just gone for Tottenham to edge this one 2-1, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it go in the opposite direction or a draw. Really interesting game, that one. Rounding off the game week is Aston Villa versus Liverpool. Two teams with 100% record so far. Aston Villa 2 wins from 2, Liverpool 3 wins from 3. I think with Liverpool, there was a lot of doubt over if they were capable of retaining their title, weren't they, before the start of the season. But I think these last two performances against Chelsea and Arsenal have just reminded everyone, and even myself, that this is a very, very good team, because there were performances the opening day against Leeds towards the end of last season when they sort of scraped results and they were looking a lot leakier than they were. There was that match they got beaten badly by Man City as well. And it just had people questioning, how they'd gone on that incredible run at the start of last season. But I think that was 27 games, 26 wins and 1 draw. And that's, I've cheated on Football Manager seasons and not had a season that good before. So it's a ridiculous run. And I think the level they've shown against Chelsea and Arsenal has just been, they've just outclassed two of the best teams in the league, and among two of the biggest teams in Europe. So I can see them certainly carrying on and winning ways, but Aston Villa have been so impressive so far. They're the only team yet to concede a goal. Leicester, the only team to score more than Liverpool so far, so it's an intriguing battle on that front. Aston Villa will be full of confidence going into this game. They beat Fulham, obviously, 3-0 in their last Premier League game. It's an interesting one. I don't see Liverpool running away with it. Last season's game corresponding fixture at Villa Park was a really close one. We needed Andy Robertson and I think it was Sadio Mane in the 89th and 94th minute or something like that to turn a 1-0 defeat into a 2-0 win for that one. So it's not an easy place to go to, even when Villa was struggling towards the bottom of the table. But I can see a repeat of that performance. I've gone for 2-1 to Liverpool again.
2-1, yeah. I've got Liverpool here as well. I've gone 3-1. I feel like I pulled up quite a few 3-1s this week, but it's the nature, I suppose, of the beast at the moment, isn't it? I think with Villa, obviously Jack Grealish was so impressive last season, wasn't he? But now he's got, better players around him. Obviously getting Ross Barkley in as well on loan from Chelsea, and Ollie Watkins has obviously been impressive going forward. And McGinn had his injury problems, didn't he, last season? I think suddenly Grealish has got, a better quality of player around him, and that will obviously make him a lot better. And I think they'll be absolutely fine this season, Villa. They've obviously battled relegation for so long last season, only just stayed in the league, and if they would have gone down, that'd have been dreadful for them, because they do spend money, don't they? They've obviously got money there to spend, and the fact they stayed up. And Liverpool, I think I was a little bit guilty of, not being a bit disrespectful, but you do forget, don't you? I suppose you forget the end of last season because they won it so comfortably. If their performances did dip, and I suppose you forget how, dominant they probably are, to be honest. And I think that also says a lot about the other teams in the league. I still think City are short of another centre forward, to be honest. If they'd have got a top draw, a Lautaro Martinez in this summer, someone like that, I still think City are a little bit short, and I'm not sure, talk about the other teams, Chelsea, United, Arsenal, Tottenham, Leicester. I still think they're short of, quite a way short of title challengers. So yeah, it is difficult at this stage. Obviously, I said I'd be surprised if Liverpool won the league, but in fairness to me, that was before they signed Thiago. That obviously made me change my mind a lot because he's so outstanding. But yeah, it's one of those games. I do think Villa will give them a good game and a good shout, and they'll obviously battle them. But 3-1 Liverpool.
3-1 Liverpool. Okay, thanks, Matt. You can find predictions and previews for all of those games over on sportsmore.co.uk. We've got news features looking ahead to them and plenty more games across Europe and in England as well. So be sure to check that out. It's the international break for next week. So Matt and I will be back when the Premier League returns. But please be sure to subscribe to this podcast. If you like what you hear, you can find it on all the usual channels. And you can also find us and subscribe to us on YouTube. So please be sure to do that. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.